Hi everybody, it's Kari Weber-Young with Contagious Living, and I just want to say thank you for joining me tonight. I want to share my story, my actual backstory, because a lot of people that follow my show, whether it's Contagious Living or Umbrella for Life events, people are always asking me, where did you start? And as a coach, I guess I don't go back enough to tell you where I started. So my start goes back several years ago before I was a mom. I've got 4 beautiful children. I had postpartum depression. This is many years ago before we had the little commercials about, are you depressed and are you anxious and what does it look like? And this is back many years ago when no one wanted to talk about it. If you had postpartum depression or PPD, you were labeled as mentally ill or, maybe weak as a woman. You're a mom. You should, as a privileged mom who could stay at home and raise my children, I should have it together. All those societal pressures and stories that we tell ourselves and put on ourselves, that was kind of what was going on back in the day when I had postpartum depression. So I'm going to take you guys back to 6 months after I had a baby. And what was common back then was this thing called, the baby blues, where maybe you felt a little sad, and it was normal because we have hormones, we're producing milk, our bodies are doing all these crazy things, right? So for me, I was super excited to have my son, Austin. I had a good delivery. Things were good. I owned my first home. I was in a happy marriage. My life was good. 6 months after I had Austin, I was sitting down doing that old thing we used to do called writing thank you cards. And I literally was sitting in my living room. My husband had gone to bed. My beautiful baby was laying on the living room floor. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, no predestined thought, no situational thing in life happened to me. Literally, my heart started to pound, which I had never felt before, unless I was, running 3 miles. And my hair started to have prickles and stand on fire. I started seeing things in different colors. And literally, I was so afraid I was going to fall on top of my baby. I slithered off the couch, and in complete panic, I don't mean like everybody who's on panic medicine. I want to take you to a level of panic, thinking there was a black fog that was going to engulf me. I crawled into my husband's bed and I reached up and said, please, please, please. I couldn't even hardly talk. So fast forward into that, I end up having what was called a panic attack, and it felt like a near-death experience to me. I went to several doctors. I had blood work done. I was very heavily involved as a worship leader in my church. I had the people at church pray for me. I went to the pastor. I went to a Christian counselor. I was told I could quite possibly have a demon inside of me. Yeah, that wasn't quite the case. Go for a run, put your makeup on, you'll feel better if you look better, all of those things. And so after 6 solid months of not being heard, I was completely depleted. My weight was down to 117. I'm 140 here, so imagine that. Just inside and outside of me was completely dying. So one of the parts of postpartum depression, which I hadn't been diagnosed yet with, I'm just giving you that so you can follow the story, is people have a tendency to go back to a post-traumatic moment and gather up the thoughts around that. And then they end up, it's called the hamster wheel in psychology, where we just focus on it. So my focus had become, and I want to tell you guys this, I want you to feel this, from the minute you get up in the morning till the minute you go to bed, and you have a child to take care of and a husband who's traveling all over the world. You're alone and you live out on 5 acres with your dogs and pigs, It was pretty secluded for me. I would think all day long about having an aneurysm. I know, right? Like, where did that come from? I found out later that somebody had an aneurysm in our family, and there was probably a tie and a correlation to that. But every day you're thinking about this. And sometimes when I tell this story to people today, I think, thank God I didn't know about manifestation, because I would have manifested myself to have this horrible thing happen to my body, because I literally was thinking about it all day long. Is what if there's a blood clot during childbirth and it got in my brain, and it would cause me to almost have anxiety and depression to the point that I had outer body experiences of, I wasn't even sure if I was even there. And it got so bad, you guys, that I would look in the mirror and I didn't even see myself. I didn't know who I was. So I want to explain something. When people come to you and they have depression, we have to look, and if you're a doctor or physician, we have to look into whether, is it situational depression? Situational depression is, you know, you have the white picket fence life. I have a book called White Picket Fence, so that's mine. But a white picket fence life is where, you know, you're happily married or happily in a relationship, or, you know, if you're a child in high school, you're the athlete and you're the scholar and you have lots of friends. Life is really good for you, but you can't feel. That would be chemical. Situation is where nobody likes you and you're always in trouble and you're always the loner and you have poor self-esteem and life has happened to you and you never had a white picket fence. You've never had that protective piece around you. So situational depression is, those are the people that I can always help because I can help you change your situation. But chemical or biochemical is where the serotonin level in your body is not working. It's very often after you have a baby to be diagnosed with postpartum depression because your chemicals are all mixed up. You're producing milk, you're doing all these crazy things. You're not getting any sleep. That was my story, no sleep. And then trying to go to these doctors that want to give you this medicine and that medicine, but you don't really know if you trust anybody because you don't know if anybody's really listening to you, and you really can't even tell if you trust yourself because when you look in the mirror, you don't even know who you are. It's very, very, very dark, and it's very a desperate place for people. And so when this happened to me, I just kind of went into this dark space and I couldn't find any help. I felt very isolated and very alone. So my story to other people when they come to me about people that they know that are struggling with this is to remember, I have a lot of people in my life. I'm the youngest of 7 kids. My parents were heavily involved. I had a church, a community, people. I was very lucky. And I still felt super alone and hopeless and worthless because why do I feel this way? What is wrong with me? And at that time, 20 years ago, doctors didn't even really know what to say to you other than I think it's the baby blues. So that happening, I just want to share that at the point that I became done, and where a lot of people that actually commit suicide find that desperation of done, that's where, you know, they're constantly thinking, and it isn't because they're weak, it's because they have no alternative. They're getting up every day and am I here? Is the person I'm looking at real? Is the conversations I'm having real? Did I really hear that? You start to lose such a grip of your mental capacity. They used to use the word like psychotic, and there's other words to use for that. They don't use them anymore, so I don't want to even say them, but not positive words. So you're really hard on yourself if there is a piece of you still left to kind of analyze where you are yourself. And then it's really hard too if I have a big heart and I want to serve people and serve my family. And so to have my mom look at me and know she couldn't help me and feel frustrated because she didn't understand. And for the family that's there with you, it's not that they don't care about you. If you are struggling in this place, it's because they don't know how to help you. If you haven't been there, it's impossible to understand how to be there in the capacity that they need you to be there. And so part of my story since then has been helping survivors to understand that if you're a survivor of suicide, you gotta reach out and talk to your family and make sure they understand it isn't something that they did. This is something that was, whether it was situational, you have the capacity to get the help to change your situation. If it's biochemical, it's very much by chance. You're playing with doctors, you're playing with counselors, you're playing with time. And my advice is don't leave your chemically depressed people alone. And you do have a responsibility. If you have a child that doesn't see, you will always walk them around in their space and help them get there. If they can't hear, you will teach them how to communicate. If somebody doesn't feel, it's your responsibility to be with them to help them get to that space. The reason it's so important to get vulnerable with people is because we could sit and talk about suicide and depression and anxiety all day long. It's everywhere. You can type it in. There's lots of stories. What I feel like is missing is your story and my story, this part from the gut. So I'm going to do my best to get through sharing with you what it really, really looked like at the depths of those moments, because people who have lost people to suicide, these are the parts of the story they never get to hear. And because I'm so fortunate to be here, I want to share with you guys, I feel I need to share with you guys what those moments look like. So beside me is the bridge. This is the Astoria, Oregon bridge that crosses Oregon to Washington, the connection, which is both the places I'm from. On a dark, rainy Astoria day, when I decided that my baby deserved something more than a mom that could not feel his existence, I'm going to make it very clear. I made an attitude and a mindset in the most broken state of my life to be the best mom that I could be. So I pulled the theater actress in me and pretended to be that mom for him. And a lot of people tell me they can't. BS. You can and you must. If you have children, you must, or you find somebody else to be there if you can't. So my story is that I drove to this bridge and I parked my car. It's not a people walking bridge. I drove my car, parked it on the corner, picked a time when I knew there was least likely traffic, and I walked over to that bridge and I stared at that bridge. This bridge opens up on the Columbia River so that barges and, things carrying goods could get through. So it's a very large bridge. Had drove across it many times and never ever thought that I'd be standing on it thinking about jumping over the bridge. It's amazing the things in your life that will save you from the tomorrows that you really aren't supposed to and meant to experience. I stood on this bridge with Austin in the car, and I remember thinking I need to roll down the window in case the sun does come out in Astoria, Oregon. It's not very likely, but if the sun was to come down, that he would breathe and be okay. And I knew it wouldn't be long until somebody would find Austin. And everything happens the way that it is meant to be. I got up on that bridge and I looked down and I remember thinking, as a voice coach, I'm very aware of this region of my body. And I remember thinking, I don't feel anything. That's why this is something I could even consider, you guys. It's not a mental thing. It is a broken, your body is not working. And you've done everything you can to be proactive to fix this. But living with no feeling is not fair to everybody around you. So I'm looking down at the bridge and I'm thinking about that lump in my throat coming up and getting stuck there and thinking, I have had such a beautiful life until this postpartum depression thing is kicked in. And the last thing I'm gonna feel is this lump in my throat going down as I crash into the water. And then as I'm thinking I can do this, maybe I'll put my hands around my neck and I won't feel it. Maybe I'll squeeze it when I fall. Maybe I'll pass out when I fall. I'm thinking about all these things that a contagious living happy girl doesn't think about. My son was 16 months old and yelling, "My mama, my mama, mama." And I could hear him, like, as a voice instructor, the acoustics on that bridge were like to heaven, back down to the ocean, and back as loud as I could hear. I could see my mama in red words. That is why I didn't jump that day. And so I'm really, really blessed that I made being a mom, I pretended and put myself in that space and walked through that mindset every day, because that is what saved me in the end, is that little boy. And there were a couple other attempts. I met a stranger I took home. Her name was Kim. And she shared with me that I was hoping if I took this girl home off the road in the middle of the night that she would, get me in the middle of the night or something and I wouldn't have to think about this anymore. But she shared with me, as I was a faith-driven person, that she wasn't sure that if you committed suicide that you go to heaven. And then you wouldn't see your family and your friends and the people that you love. And there's so many things that happened in my life because I kept my eyes open that stopped me from doing the atrocity of ending my life. So I ended up going and seeing a doctor finally after all of this, saying, I have to get help. There has to be something more. I went to 3 hours later to Portland, Oregon, and saw Dr. Marcia Khan, who shared with me that I could get better and that she believed in me because she said something really valuable to me, which I think every doctor should find something valuable in every person struggling with this and help them find their place of recovery in this journey. It's different for everybody. I want to share this because this is huge. This is why I'm here today. This is why I've been on this journey. I walked into the waiting room by myself. My husband drove me there, and there was nobody in the waiting room. It was very bleak, and I was like, this is where I'm gonna get help. Okay, thanks for the color. And I remember there were 3 little buttons, light switches by the door, and they'd go red and they'd go green. And then when I got the green, it kept going green and green and green. I was like, I wonder what, I'm gonna push the green. I'm the only one in here. I pushed the green and the door opened and I went in to like the Wizard of Oz. It was the counselor. And I was so like, what was the green and red? And I'm in a space of life where I just don't care about the next breath I take, but that red and green light was triggering something to me. And I believe that it was a godsend, because that's a whole part of this journey. Is she said, well, it's really kind of embarrassing for people, you know, you have like depression and people don't want to admit that they're depressed. They don't want to talk about depression, and oh, that's not a good story. So she explained to me that that light was to protect me so that no one else would see me coming in to see her, and I wouldn't see anybody else. So you didn't know who was coming in to get depression, and I would get to get help for depression. And I was like, on the phone, when I made this appointment and talked to you, I remember that you shared with me that this is like the common cold and you could cure me of this, and everybody's susceptible to this. But what does it mean when I have to sit here and be embarrassed to the point I gotta have a light to come in here? So should I be embarrassed that I'm here? Or should I be excited that I'm here to meet with a professional that believes that she can help me? That was kind of a back message to me. And I only went and saw that woman 3 times, for as far gone as I was to thinking about jumping off of that bridge that day, to a few weeks later sitting in that room 3 hours away from home. And you know, as a last resort, this lady was my last resort, because I decided I could get better and I wanted to be there for my children. And she saw me 3 times and said, this is your message. No one's ever noticed the lights. No one's ever been bothered by the lights. No one cares about the lights, and everybody does want to hide when they come in here. So you're the first person that's ever come in here and said, hear me roar. I'm not hiding. I want to get better. And everybody else feels like they have to hide. I'm going to go out and find everybody else and pull them out from underneath their covers and say, get out. We can't hide about this. We got to celebrate that we can get better. We got to stand on that bridge together. So that has been my life's mission. I saw her 3 times, and she gave me the confidence and gave me the ability to see the journey, because she pointed out that I was different by seeing the things and feeling the things that I felt. And then it's very common to lose your faith. I had no faith. I was like, God, who, in this moment of my life? And it gave me a chance to look up and say again, you created me and I'm broken. So maybe you're the only one that can fix me. You've got the ingredients for why you made me. And so I'm going to give this one more shot. I'm just going to try. I have nothing to lose. And that has brought me to 20 years later to a space where the conversation is changing every day, as I'm realizing that the suicide survivors in society today are considered the people that are left behind. And they're carrying all these feelings of abandonment. Why did they leave me? Was I not good enough? Why did my child commit suicide? Was I not a good enough parent? As a teacher, I thought that I gave everything I had to that student who was lost. Spouses, did you not love me enough? So I'm standing here today because I want to create a new conversation. And I want to say this as politely as I can. It's not about you. It was never about you. It wasn't your journey. I'm standing here as a rare person who was suicidal, to the point of jumping off the bridge, to the point of doing the other things I haven't mentioned on here, to trying to take my life. And because I get to stand here because I was blessed to not have followed through for other reasons, and I'll never know all of the reasons other than that little boy that day calling me. It's about those people. So if you have a loved one that's left, we have to look deep inside of ourselves and let them rest in peace for their journey, and forgive yourself to know that it was never anything you could have done differently. It's something that was within them. And if you have somebody that's situationally depressed, then yes, get them help, do everything you can. But if it's chemical and you've tried everything that you can and they're gonna go to that space, there's a broken space in them that you can't fix, and it was never your job. This is part of the journey. And I know it's hard to swallow, but the survivors are the people that are here. And we need to get together and start talking about that journey and what it feels like to be there. I want to invite you guys to talk about being vulnerable. sharing those bridge moments, sharing the pills that you swallowed, sharing about the people who pulled you out and saved you and how you survived. You're the survivor. And so that's a conversation that we've got to start having to change the flaw and the talk about suicide and depression so that we have somewhere to go forward in healing. And when people realize that they feel this way so deeply and that they can be used, that's going to change their perspective. It doesn't mean you're going to feel happy tomorrow, but it will give you a service. It'll give you a challenge in your daily routine, a reason to get up in the morning. And so I'm going to leave you with one last thought. As a coach now for suicide, depression, anxiety, the number one tool that I have learned is the more that you try to own your depression, or you trying to help your family member, the more you try to help them fix themselves, the more energy that you give to the thought of being depression, to being depressed and depression. So that hamster wheel I was on, the way to get off of that is simply to say, go to the mirror and say, I have depression, I'm depressed, or I'm not myself, whatever your story is, and it's okay. And when you just accept where you're at, just get up, get dressed, do what you can do for the day, and make each day a day that you're just simply glad you're breathing so that you can find your way through that darkness. And I don't want to promise you, because it's not my responsibility, it's not my place to own your journey, but I can promise you for myself, the number one step to getting better was kind of saying, oh, it doesn't really matter if I'm depressed. I don't have to wear this red badge of courage every day. And just accepting the fact that all you got to do is be thankful that you're breathing and stop asking yourself how you feel every day. And it's like that Band-Aid effect when you're a little kid and you look over and you can't remember why you have a Band-Aid on. If you've been depressed to this level, it's never going to be that way because you don't want to forget, because how can you help others? But I can honestly tell you 100% that I was on the very, 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 very bottom of the barrel. And once I got on that journey to getting better, I can say within a year and a half, I got to a space where I no longer pinched myself, had to look in the mirror, ask me who I was. And today I'm in a place where I get up every day and I don't think about depression unless I'm being asked to speak about it. So I just want to invite you guys, when you look at a bridge and you know people that are struggling with this, unless it's you, somebody you know, I want you to look at a bridge and wonder, are you thinking about stepping over it? Or are you thinking about getting to the other side? I want to invite you to come to the other side with me and find recovery and find your joy again. So let me know if this is a conversation that you want to have. You can get with me at kari@kariweberyoung.com, 587-832-3435, anytime, any day. And I'm happy to share with you how you can get to the other side of the bridge. Thank you.